It's no secret that Disney has absolutely obliterated the Star Wars franchise now, but I wanted to look a little deeper and ask the question, what is the worst Disney Plus Star Wars show? Because we're not going to talk about the movies, I'll do that at another point. We all know that the sequel trilogy was bad. People have mixed opinions on the spin-offs as well. Personally, I actually think the spin-offs, Rogue One and Solo, are actually pretty solid, surprisingly enough, but the sequel trilogy is still pretty bad, so there's really no point in even talking about that here. But I want to go over a lot of the show. I'm not going to go over every single one, partly because, one, I haven't seen them all. There's a couple I haven't seen. And two, we're really only looking for the worst one. Now, I think most of us already know the answer, what the worst one was. If you just look through my videos, you can tell which one I thought was the worst, but I want to look over them all, over some of the worst ones in detail. Now, I could throw Mandalorian Season 3 in there because that was awful, but as a whole, the show still isn't great, but the first two seasons were perfectly passable. So they had really bad episodes, don't get me wrong, but as a whole, the first two seasons of that were passable. So I'm not really going to include that here. I'm also not going to include Andor because, one, it seems like most people seem to really like that show, and two, I didn't bother watching it. I know people are going to tell me, you should watch it, it's good. I don't care. I have no interest in watching a show about fucking Cassian Andor. So, now that we got that out of the way, we're not going to look at these in any sort of order. We're just going to look at them as a whole. First one I want to talk about is The Bad Batch. And this isn't the worst one. Trust me, this isn't even the worst animated show they've put out. I think Resistance is way worse, but Resistance wasn't on Disney Plus, it was on Disney XD, so I'm not really going to include that here, but let's just say I got about 3 episodes into that show before dipping, so that tells you all you need to know. But The Bad Batch is, the main problem with it is that it's such wasted potential. Seeing the rise of the Empire is something I've wanted to see on screen for a while. I would have loved to have seen, if you told me that there was a show that took place at the tail end of the Clone Wars and showed the rise of the Empire as kind of a sequel series to the Clone Wars, I'd say that sounds awesome. But this show doesn't do enough with it. It spends way too much time on filler, and the ending, from what I've heard, I didn't see Season 3. I stopped watching about halfway through Season 2. But from what I've heard, it's kind of a nothing burger. It feels more like a season finale, but the series finale just kind of feels shoehorned in. Almost like they wanted to make more seasons, but realized they didn't have enough material. And again, this sucks because this show had so much potential, but they squandered it. And that's going to be a common theme throughout a lot of these shows. One of them that pissed me off in particular was Ahsoka, because it's technically a sequel series to Rebels, which is a show I still really like, and I maintain is probably the best show Disney has made. It's the best Disney show, or the best Star Wars show Disney has made. But this show was terrible. Not only does it break canon by making Sabine Force sensitive and basically claiming anybody can become a Jedi, which is fucking stupid, it has so many stupid concepts that I can't even go into them all. I don't understand the villain of Morgan Elsbeth. I don't know why she's here. Thrawn is a fucking joke in this show. Ezra is barely in it, and I get the actor for Ezra was pretty good, I'll give that. But that's really the only praise I can give this show, is that at least Ezra was okay. Because Sabine makes a lot of stupid decisions and never gets reprimanded for them, gets stabbed in the stomach and is totally fine despite getting stabbed with a fucking plasma beam. Yeah, sorry Qui-Gon, you died after about a minute, yet she can survive for God knows how long before getting medical attention, and we'll get back to that with Obi-Wan Kenobi. Ahsoka has no emotions, and that's honestly true for the rest of the cast, including Hera, who decides to bring her kid into battle. Yeah, parent of the year right there. And just all around, nothing in the show makes sense. I did an entire video on the Anakin episode of the World Between Worlds episode, because that episode was so convoluted, and everybody bitched about it when I criticized the episode, yet no one can seem to agree what the lesson was, or even whether or not Anakin was actually there. That's how badly written this show is. Okay. Next one up is one that really hurts to talk about. Actually, you know what? Let's talk about the Book of Boba Fett first. Because, once again, this is kind of a nothing burger. A show about Boba Fett after Return of the Jedi sounds awesome, but instead they decided to try to make him the crime lord of Tatooine, and having zero idea how the crime world and the mafia work, having a very childish view of it, even to the point of having some of the worst action sequences this franchise has ever seen, like that basically scooter chase, which is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen. It shoves a couple episodes in about Din Djarin because they didn't have enough material, and to set up for Mandalorian Season 3, even though the end of the show really did just feel like Mandalorian Season 3, or Season 2.5, I guess. And again, this is just squandered potential. He should have gone back to his bounty hunting ways and showing the rest of the galaxy who maybe heard that he went out like a bitch, being hit by a blind man and falling into a Sarlacc pit, maybe trying to reestablish himself as one of the most feared bounty hunters in the galaxy. Instead, they make him a twit who decides to roll the mafia for some reason. Great. Now let's get to Obi-Wan Kenobi. Holy fucking shit. This was easily the most disappointing show, because Bad Batch, again, the concept is interesting and it had a lot of potential, but I didn't really care about the Bad Batch. I thought the episodes of Clone Wars they were in were perfectly fine, and the Ahsoka series I figured was gonna be crap, so I didn't really set my expectations too high for it. Obi-Wan Kenobi, on the other hand, I thought really could have been something. And it could have been. Following Obi-Wan on Tatooine is a story that's really interesting. Hell, I have the novel, basically the original version of this show, where he is in his isolation on Tatooine, and it's a really good novel. And honestly, they should have just adapted the novel into the show, but no. He has to go save fucking Leia, who originally in the canon had never met Obi-Wan and only knew him by reputation, having in these stupid fucking Inquisitors who are pale imitations of their Rebels counterparts, adding in Reva, having her be the main villain of the show despite, 1, not being very threatening, 2, the acting not being very good in general, and 3, having nothing to do with the overall narrative, which is, it should have been Obi-Wan and Vader in kind of a cat and mouse chase. And I don't think they should have had Obi-Wan and Vader fight, much less have them fight twice. I think, again, maybe Vader heard he's out and about and decided to try to chase him down, but is unable to. That would have been something very interesting. And again, could kind of build up for their big reunion in episode 4. But no, they had to have them fight because pandering. And again, Leia's here for some fucking reason. There's so many characters in this show that I couldn't give less of a shit about. Like, the people who work for the Pathfinders, whatever they're called, basically the rebels. None of them are very interesting. Again, the villains are a fucking joke, even down to Vader being an incompetent moron. This show was, and Obi-Wan should not have gone after Leia. He needed to stay and protect Luke, and making Bail Organa a fucking idiot for having him go instead of, oh, I don't know, maybe asking the Imperial Senate who you actually work for. God, this show's dumb. I already ranted about this show for 30 minutes, so you can watch my video on that, my full video for more on that. But yeah, this was a pretty big contender, but we all know what the worst one really was, and it's The Acolyte. I did a video on literally every episode of this show, and I wasn't even intending to. Like, after the first 2 episodes, I'm like, I don't even know if I want to continue the show, because it was bad. It was bad. And I'm like, I just don't care anymore. But then episode 3 came out, everyone talked about how awful it was, I had to see for myself, and I made a video on it and decided to make more and more. So, yeah. And then, nothing in this makes sense. Absolutely. The characters are uninteresting, the acting is atrocious, the effects aren't very good, the entire story's fucking retarded, and just the extra kick in the balls was having Darth Plagueis show up on that island. Really? I am so... Oh, do I need to mention the space witches? Do I? I don't think I do. I think I went over them pretty thoroughly in my review of the episodes. But yeah, it's easily The Acolyte, but I felt like going over these other shows briefly is because just to show just how bad Disney Star Wars is. And Skeleton Crew is coming out soon. I don't think it's going to be any good. It looks pretty stupid. Apparently, it's supposed to be part of the Mando-verse that they have, which consists of The Mandalorian, Ahsoka, and the Book of Boba Fett. That concept alone is just stupid, but... well, which means Din Djarin will probably show up for a couple episodes because they gotta shove him in. But goddamn, this is also showing you why I no longer care about any upcoming Star Wars project. The Mandalorian Grogu, it's gonna bomb because no one gives a shit about it. The Skeleton Crew show, no one's gonna watch it. Thank God The Acolyte was canceled. Ahsoka Season 2 isn't gonna do very well. Obi-Wan isn't getting a Season 2. It shouldn't get a Season 2, might I add. And all these other movies, like apparently Dave Filoni's got another movie in the works. That's not going to happen, and it's not going to be good, even if it did happen. Taika Waititi's movie's in the toilet. That one by, what's-her-face, who made Wonder Woman, that's in the toilet. So yeah, I no longer care about anything coming up for the Star Wars franchise. You really shouldn't either, because all you're doing is giving Disney the attention that they want. And if you ignore it, they'll stop making it. And honestly, I think Disney should stop making Star Wars content. Or at least delegate it to other people that actually know what the fuck they're doing. So I'll take it out and I'll see you all next time. Bye.